Ever pondered about the clandestine world of the Mafia? Let's delve into the murky origins of this notorious secret society. Our journey begins in 19th century Sicily, a time and place steeped in poverty, political unrest, and social repression. The common folk, crushed under the weight of feudalism, yearned for a savior, a vigilante force to shield them from the oppressors. This yearning gave birth to Cosa Nostra, a term translating to our thing, a secret society that promised protection and justice, albeit in its own lawless way. The formation of Cosa Nostra was no haphazard event. It was a meticulously planned structure adhering to a strict hierarchical order. At the helm were the capofamiglia, or family heads, followed by caporegime, or captains and soldati, or soldiers at the bottom. This pyramid of power was bound together by a sacred code of silence, the omertà, a vow to never divulge any mafia secrets to outsiders, even under the threat of death. As this well-oiled machine of organized crime began to roll, it diversified its activities. Extortion and smuggling became their bread and butter, while protection rackets flourished. The Mafia clans offered protection to businesses and individuals against law enforcement and rival clans in exchange for a hefty fee. The Mafia was not a single entity, but a conglomeration of families and clans, each operating within its own territory. Rivalries between these families often led to bloody feuds and power struggles, painting a grim picture of the Sicilian landscape. In essence, the Mafia was born out of the people's desperation for protection against an oppressive regime. It morphed into a powerful underworld organization, thriving in the shadows of society. From its humble beginnings in the impoverished lanes of Sicily, the Mafia grew its tendrils, reaching out to every corner of the globe, influencing politics, economies, and lives. Thus, out of turmoil and despair, the formidable force of the Mafia was born. As the world moved, so did the Mafia. The early 20th century saw a significant shift in Mafia activity, with many members migrating to the United States. Cities like New York and Chicago, with their burgeoning immigrant populations, provided fertile ground for the Mafia to plant its roots. One figure looms large in this era of mob history: Al Capone, the notorious gangster and boss of Chicago's criminal underworld. Capone capitalized on the era of Prohibition, when the sale, production and transportation of alcohol were banned. He built a lucrative empire on the back of illicit booze, showing the world that the Mafia was more than capable of adapting to new environments and opportunities. But the Mafia did not limit itself to the United States or to the illegal alcohol trade. As the world became more interconnected, so too did the Mafia's criminal activities. The Underworld network began to spread its tentacles across the globe, establishing a presence in various countries and engaging in a wide array of criminal enterprises. From drug trafficking in South America to arms trading in Eastern Europe, the Mafia demonstrated an uncanny ability to infiltrate different sectors and exploit them for profit. This globalization of the Mafia also meant a diversification of its criminal activities. Human trafficking, money laundering, corruption. No crime was off the table if it meant furthering their influence and lining their pockets. The Mafia had evolved from a local Sicilian phenomenon into a global criminal enterprise, its reach extending into nearly every corner of the world. The Mafia's transition from a local organization to a global network was not merely a geographical shift. It marked a significant evolution in the nature of organized crime, one that saw the Mafia adapt, innovate, and expand in response to the changing world around it. The Mafia was no longer a group of Sicilian clans enforcing their own brand of justice. It had become a sophisticated and far-reaching criminal enterprise, capable of influencing global crime trends and posing a serious threat to law and order. The Mafia's reach was no longer confined to Sicily. It had become a global phenomenon. However, as the Mafia grew, so did the forces against it. In this constant struggle between order and chaos, intelligence agencies and international law enforcement took center stage. Their mission was clear: to combat the insidious influence of the Mafia, to dismantle its operations, and to bring its members to justice. In the United States, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, established a specialized unit solely to investigate and prosecute organized crime. Their efforts led to the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, or RICO, in 1970. This law allowed for the prosecution of individuals involved in a criminal organization for the collective crimes committed by the group, a significant leap forward in the fight against the Mafia. Across the Atlantic, in Italy, the Carabinieri and Polizia di Stato worked tirelessly to disrupt the operations of the Cosa Nostra. They championed laws that targeted mafia association and asset seizure, giving authorities the power to confiscate the ill-gotten gains of organized crime. However, these efforts were not without their challenges. The Mafia, cunning and adaptable, infiltrated institutions and businesses, using them as shields against law enforcement. Corruption was rampant, with authorities often co-opted to turn a blind eye or even actively aid the Mafia in their nefarious activities. Moreover, the Code of Omertà, the Mafia's vow of silence, made obtaining evidence a daunting task. Witnesses were often too terrified to speak up, and those who dared to break the silence faced severe retaliation. The Mafia, in its ruthless pursuit of power, left a trail of fear and silence that hampered law enforcement's efforts at every turn. Yet despite these obstacles, the fight against the Mafia persisted. Each conviction, each seized asset, each small victory was a blow against the Underworld empire. The battle was uphill, the enemy formidable, but the resolve of those committed to justice remained unbroken. The fight against the Mafia was on, but it was far from easy. The machinations of the underworld continued to weave their dark tapestry, but amidst the shadows, the light of justice shone ever brighter. The Mafia's actions were not without consequences. A chilling sentence, isn't it? Yet the reality it paints is even more chilling. The imprints of organized crime have been deeply etched into the fabric of society, bringing with it violence, fear, and insecurity. Let's begin with violence. The Mafia's operations were not known for their subtlety. Bloodshed was often their language, their currency, their method of negotiation. Streets turned into battlegrounds, and innocent bystanders were caught in the crossfire. This violence was not limited to physical harm. Psychological trauma rippled through communities, leaving a trail of terror that extended far beyond the immediate victims. Fear, another byproduct of the Mafia's reign, was pervasive. It crept into the corners of everyday life, casting a shadow on the simplest of activities. A walk home in the evening, a family dinner at a local restaurant, even a conversation with a neighbor, all were tinged with an undercurrent of fear. The Mafia's presence was a constant reminder that safety was a privilege, not a right. Insecurity, both personal and economic, was the third pillar of the Mafia's legacy. The organized crime syndicates didn't just rob people of their peace of mind, they also hindered social and economic development. Through corruption, extortion, and manipulation of markets, the Mafia distorted economies, discouraging investment and stifling growth. Communities found themselves trapped in a cycle of poverty and crime, a cycle that was incredibly difficult to break. But perhaps the most painful impact of the Mafia was the destruction of communities and families. The Mafia's activities tore apart the social fabric that held these units together. Families were broken, communities were divided, trust was eroded. The damage was not just physical, but profoundly emotional and psychological. In the end, the Mafia's reign was not just about crime. It was about control, fear, and destruction. It was about the systematic dismantling of society's structures and the erosion of its values. The Mafia had left a deep and lasting scar on society, a scar that we are still trying to heal from today. The fight against the Mafia is not just a fight against crime, it's a fight for our communities, our values, and our future. So, where does that leave us today? As we look toward the future, we must recognize the importance of the ongoing battle against the Mafia. This clandestine underworld has proven itself to be a resilient and formidable adversary. But we must remember that its strength is derived from the shadows. When we shine a light on their activities, we rob them of their power. The fight against the Mafia is not just a responsibility of law enforcement and intelligence agencies. It is a collective duty that falls on the shoulders of us all. Governments across the globe must remain vigilant, enacting and enforcing laws that suffocate the lifeblood of organized crime. Money. Stricter regulations on financial transactions, increased transparency in business operations, and harsher penalties for corruption are just a few steps in the long journey to rid society of this scourge. Equally as important is the role of civil society. Each one of us can contribute to this fight. It might be as simple as refusing to turn a blind eye when we see something suspicious. It might be as brave as standing up to intimidation and refusing to be silenced. Education and prevention are powerful tools in our arsenal. By teaching the next generation about the true cost of organized crime, the lives lost, the communities destroyed, the potential stifled, we can inspire them to reject the allure of easy money and false power. We must instill in them the values of honesty, integrity, and respect for the law. But let's not forget the most important part of the equation: hope. We must believe in a future where the Mafia is relegated to the history books, a cautionary tale of a path society chose not to take. The fight against the Mafia is a complex and arduous one, filled with many challenges. It requires tenacity, courage, and a steadfast commitment to justice. But it is a fight worth fighting for the sake of our future and the generations to come. The fight against the Mafia continues, and it is a fight we cannot afford to lose.